Are you struggling with the changes of perimenopause or menopause? What if quantum biology could offer a new way to help you through this transition? In today's episode, Johanna Swanson from Navigate Menopause shares her own story and unique perspective on managing hormonal health and mental wellness from a cellular level. We explore the root causes of hormonal shifts and provide concrete takeaways that you can start implementing today to support your body during this transformative time. Because let's face it, it is a portal. And if you are new here, you are listening to the How We Get Through podcast, a space for real, unfiltered conversations with healers, helpers, and humans who've been through it. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and your guide into how we get woo, a space where we don't just listen to healers, you experience them. Inside the community, you'll find rituals, journal prompts, meditations, and soul-expanding live events that leave you feeling more intuitive and whole. So if you're feeling the pull, we'd love to have you inside. The link's in the show notes. Welcome or welcome back to How We Get Through. Welcome back to How We Get Through. This is for the ladies. We have Johanna Swanson from Navigate Menopause on the show. Welcome, Joanna.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. We were chatting before and I was like, give me all this information because I turned 40 and I talk about the change, but I know it's coming, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there or none or overwhelming. And so I'm just so excited to chat with you today because I have a lot of friends that are starting to transition into that. So this will be a great episode for some real information that will be helpful for you. So I'm so excited.
Yes, we'll have a great time. I have lots of information to share.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you become basically like an advocate for other women with perimenopause and menopause?
Yeah, so my story starts when I found out that I had the BRCA gene mutation, the BRCA2 gene mutation. And so that meant that my um, chances for getting breast cancer and ovarian cancer were very high. And so as soon as I finished having both of my children, the doctors were like, "Okay, are you done? Are you done? Because as soon as you're done, it's time to take your ovaries and remove your breasts."
How
So
old were you? Please.
I was 38.
Wow.
So let's see, when I was 38, my daughter was, it's also blurry. I ended up having 7 surgeries in a year and a half because I had complications with my double mastectomy. Um And even all of those complications from the double mastectomy and that year and a half of all of those surgeries and being in and out of work and in and out of the hospital was much easier than the emotional whirlwind that I went through from having my ovaries removed. So I did the breast and that surgery first, and then the last surgery that I had was the removal of the ovaries. And so and that just started this mental health crisis for me essentially, where I went from someone who had always had really strong mental health, even through other tragedies in my life, um, to someone who was suffering from depression and anxiety so much more intense than I'd ever felt before. And there wasn't an outside cause. It wasn't because of these things that
Events.
were happening to me. It was all within me, and it was all because of these lack of hormones. And so in that moment, gosh, there are like some key moments that really just sit with me and that really propelled me forward into wanting to help other women. One of them was realizing, that because of this big hormonal shift, I went from someone who was emotionally stable to someone who was very emotionally unstable. And it just made me realize how many women of all ages are suffering from mental health issues, it's based in your hormone health, yet doctors are only going straight to prescribing SSRIs and other medications instead of looking at hormone health first. That hormone health should be first line of defense when it comes to mental health. And so I realized that, it was a big moment for me, and as I've continued to do research and learn and educate myself and get all these certifications, everything points exactly to that. All of these other things that I've learned to help myself are also things that people with mental health issues need to be addressing, whether you're an adult, a child, man, woman, whatever.
That's what was one of my questions, like, even men too, like, and children that can be impacted.
100%.
What did, like, meeting yourself at that point look like? Like, how did you have people kind of, like, help pull you out of it? How did you crawl out of that hole? That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I was in a hole and you hear, I hear so many women feeling the same way of, I feel like I had a lobotomy. I don't know who I am anymore. Um, yeah, I feel like a shell of who I used to be. These very intense feelings. And so this other really important moment that I had was when it dawned on me that I needed to grieve. When I realized so much of this internal dialogue that I was having was me trying to get back to who I was. And when I realized that I needed to accept where I am and grieve and not give up. It's not about giving up and just accepting it, but it's like, wait a second, Joanna, you're never going to be who you used to be. Just like you're never gonna be who you were when you were 21, right? We're constantly changing, so you need to accept where you are instead of just trying to get back to who you once were, and this is a time that can be exciting. You get to create a whole new person. It doesn't have to be a sad goodbye to, like, "Oh, I'm never gonna be able to, remember all the things that I used to remember or multitask the way that I used to multitask." 'Cause that for me, that was one of the biggest grievances that I had was that I call it like my mental, prowess, you
Yeah.
know? I really felt a change in that mental prowess, and so, um, that was a big grieving process for me. I have to write things down now. I don't have the same ability to multitask, and so I had to grieve that, but then also say, "Okay, well, this is an opportunity for me to lean into other strengths or build other strengths that I've never built before." So that grieving was a really big tipping point in helping me get out of that depression.
Mhm. Which can sometimes feel counterintuitive, right? To lean into the depression or lean into the sadness around it. But sometimes, and it sounds like maybe in your case, part of the depression, not all of it, is that misalignment of like, it shouldn't be this way, it shouldn't be this way, it shouldn't, I have to go back, 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 back. And so like resistance towards the the difference now. And that's hard.
I also think we have a little bit of a misunderstanding about what grief is. Yes, there's a sadness in grief, but acknowledging that grief and acknowledging the sadness is also gives us a chance to have that compassion. And through that compassion is where we're really free ourselves to move forward. And grief isn't something that just goes away. I don't think it's something we're supposed to experience and then be done with. It makes up who we are. Like, I have this I have this fantasy of, being able to create a piece of art where it's like, your soul is, like a black just it's like a perfect black image. And then all of these little experiences and traumas and all the little things that we experience in life poke these little holes in that black canvas. And then that projection of all of those little holes is what we see, is what you see of what you really are. And that grief is part of what makes you who you are and what part of what makes you appreciate certain things or have these realizations of the changes that you want to make into moving forward.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love how you have the perspective too of, sometimes you hear it with people who can't see, there are other senses that are heightened, and so it's the same kind of thing, right? When this thing gets kind of quieted or taken away or lowered, other things can come alive. It's sometimes forced that way,
Mhm.
right? But, like, there's a lot of things in life that just happen that literally just put you on a different path, and you kinda have to choose, like, am I gonna be resistant towards this or go with it?
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah. That's what I think when I listen to the telepathy tapes.
yes.
I was like, "Oh,
So
well,
good.
because, they're nonverbal, just like when someone's blind, they have their other senses are ignited, maybe this is kind of similar."
Yeah. And so I think, like, giving birth, having your period for the first time, and then I think about menopause as well, like, a little bit as a portal, if you think about it kind of spiritually, but I'm curious of what your perspective is having gone through it.
Yeah. So again, my experience was a bit dramatic, right? Because I was one day very hormonally healthy and balanced to the next day not having any hormones. But it definitely is a portal and into so many aspects of just being forced to really listen to your body. And for some women, it's a real like it was for me, it's like a hard stop, your back's against the wall, and your body is screaming at you. That is what these perimenopause symptoms are. It is your body demanding that you start paying attention because not you don't have to suffer from all of those symptoms.
And what are the symptoms, if you can kinda walk through
There's
some
like
of them?
over 40 symptoms
Wow.
because our sex hormones, our estrogen, our progesterone, our testosterone, they are part of all of our body systems. Our brain, if you just take your estrogen, it's part of your brain health, your heart health, your bone health, your insulin, your blood sugar and your metabolism. It's part of everything. And so w- if it's one of the things that I'm hearing so much, like, it's so great that perimenopause and menopause are getting their, attention that it deserves, because a lot of women are suffering, and we shouldn't be suffering with perimenopause symptoms for 10 years before we stop menstruating. This is becoming common. And having a bunch of these symptoms, you know, it can be anything from metallic taste in your mouth, ringing in your ears, itchy skin, shocks in your body, gut issues, brain fog, sleep disturbances, dry vagina. I mean,
Hot flashes.
hot flashes, rage, hair falling out, gingivitis. Okay,
Wow.
so many things, but it's not normal for that to start so early. And we're seeing that women are even in their 30s and they have all of these symptoms and they're more educated and they're going to their doctors and they're saying, I think I'm in perimenopause because I have this, and this. And their doctors are saying, no, you're too young to be in perimenopause. And so then we get this, I'm being gaslit. I'm being gaslit. I know I'm in perimenopause. My doctors tell me I'm too young. Well, that's because 35 is too young to be having perimenopause symptoms. And that's because the root cause of our hormone health is
Being
our
destroyed.
it's being destroyed, yeah, and it's being destroyed by our modern lifestyles. And so doctors are kind of in a hard place where they're like, "Oh, wow, like, yeah, I guess those are perimenopause symptoms." But they're not trained in what these energetic root causes are.
Mm. And can you maybe talk about those energetic root causes? Because I think that might also impact how younger women are getting their periods earlier and earlier too. So I'm wondering, right, if they're getting their period earlier, is that throwing them into menopause earlier if we're following their cycle of life? Um,
Exactly. So this science that I'm training is called applied quantum biology.
that sounds
And
really cool.
it's, for me, it's kind of like, whoa, this like amazing thing because I've always, since I was very young, been fascinated with the quantum,
Mm-hmm.
and
I love
so
it.
when I found this, it just aligns. But so what quantum biology is, it's the study of how light, water, and magnetism affect our health, specifically how our mitochondria are functioning. And we learn in school that our mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell because they create ATP. And that's what powers the cell in order to do whatever that cell's function is. Quantum biology is looking one level deeper into how do the mitochondria get the energy that they need in order to make that ATP. And that energy comes from light, water, and magnetism. So the easiest point of entry into the basics of the root cause of our hormones is looking at how does light affect the way that we produce hormones. And because of quantum biology, we know exactly how sunlight is good for our hormones and artificial blue light is bad for our hormones,
Which is in all screens.
which is in all screens, yes. Because all of our TVs are LED,
Right.
our phones have LED, our tablets have LED, our light bulbs, especially if you live in California, you're only allowed to have LED. They do not, well, that's changing. I actually went to Home Depot and found some incandescent light bulbs. They were horribly expensive, and I'm hoping that soon the prices will go down as they become more available again. But we used to live in an environment with incandescent light bulbs. And incandescent light bulbs are not as high in the toxic blue light, and they also have more of the near infrared and red light frequency. So they're a lot less harmful. The LED lights are very high in that blue frequency and low, low, low in the near infrared and red.
And that's why you're wearing those glasses. But
Yes.
which we talked about, the blue light glasses from like 5 years ago, the clear ones don't
Mhm.
work.
No,
PSA, everyone.
it's yeah. You have to get the dorky ones.
Uh-huh.
And then you have to just be okay with, like, for me, when I'm outside, I don't wear sunglasses. I wear a hat. I don't wear sunscreen. If I'm surfing in, like, the middle of the day when the sun's really strong and I'm gonna be out for 2 hours, I'll put sunscreen on my face, but, otherwise, that sun is good for me.
Yeah. Which is very interesting because we're recording this like end of April, soon to be May. May is always kind of a weird month, but when it's been like drizzly outside or cloudy, I am like, well, the day is over. Like, get back in bed. Like, I am so impacted by the sun, and I'm like, I don't think is this okay?
Well, that's normal, This is one other thing too is it's w it's also important to get outside into the sun because of how bright it is outside. Even if it's cloudy outside, it's still brighter than it is if you're sitting inside behind your windows.
Wow. And that helps the cells create more energy?
Yes,
Okay. So then they function.
better.
Okay.
And so we have special cells in our eyes that respond to the specific frequencies of energy. So I want you to think about, that the lesson you learn, it's like in 3rd grade. I was a teacher for 20 years, so it's like part of 3rd grade where you learn about how light goes through a prism and then it refracts the light and it makes all of the colors of the rainbow. Okay, every color of that rainbow represents a different frequency of light. So blue light has a frequency, it's like 420 to 580 that is what we call, blue light. And then when you go up to like the near infrared and red, those are higher in frequency. So we have cells in our eyes called melanopsin, and they respond specifically to that blue frequency of light. And then that frequency of light then tells our brains to produce different amino acids. And then those amino acids then become serotonin. And then the serotonin becomes melatonin. Or those specific frequencies of light tell our brain to produce cortisol. And cortisol is what's considered a master hormone. There's 3 master hormones: cortisol, leptin with a P, leptin, and melatonin. And these are considered master hormones because they have so much of an influence on so many of our other systems. And so many of they are called axes in our brain. We have like the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, where your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, and your adrenal glands all have to work together and communicate in order to send out hormones and signals and, what time of day it is, what time of month is it, am I supposed to be digesting, am I supposed to be resting, am I gonna run away because a tiger's trying to kill me? And so it's just all, this algorithm that's telling our bodies how we're supposed to work. And so much of that algorithm is dictated by light because the light then is signaling our cortisol, our leptin, or our melatonin.
Mm. Which is a big trend right now is cortisol face.
Yes.
Um, can you explain that?
Yeah. So when you're exposed to artificial blue light, because of the special cells in your eyes, you're giving your body a signal to release cortisol. Cortisol isn't bad if we're being signaled correctly. Our bodies are made to wake up with the sunrise, be outside, right? Because we're animals, right? We're not supposed to be living in apartment buildings in the dark, right? We're supposed to be attuned with nature. And in the morning, naturally, you get a spike in your cortisol to wake you up, to give you that energy to be awake, to go and get your food. And then as the day goes, your cortisol starts to come down. And as your cortisol starts to drop, your melatonin is supposed to rise. They have a completely inverse relationship. But because we're not getting outside and getting the signals from the natural sunlight, we're inside with LED lights looking at like, what do we do when we wake up? We look at our phone. So you're not getting a natural cortisol spike there. you're getting a huge spike, and then you're like, oh, you go in the bathroom and you're getting ready and your LED lights, you're getting way all these signals to release cortisol, 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 cortisol. And while we may not realize it, we're just putting our body in this high cortisol, high stress state all day. The sun goes down. If we lived in nature when the sun went down, then that gives our melatonin a chance to completely start to rise, which melatonin is the miracle hormone that does all of the repair. It repairs our brain. They have studies showing that low melatonin is linked to Alzheimer's and dementia and all of these things. So, but if we're living again in this artificial world at night, what are we doing before we go to bed? So we're telling our brains to stay awake, keep pumping out that cortisol. Then we can't sleep. Then if we do fall asleep, we're not getting good sleep because our melatonin isn't rising enough. We're not repairing our brain.
I have a very important question because
So
I'm an avid smut reader and I use a Kindle. I'm like, oh no, but it's in black. It's like the black and white words. Is that okay? You can Google that. I'm like, oh no,
do you have the lights on at
I
all?
don't have the lights on.
Okay. I think it's backlit.
Yeah. Because
Um,
I'm curious too if there's like things you can put on your screens.
what I tell all of my clients is to just get blue blockers.
Yeah.
Because even if no matter what you're doing, once that sun goes down, you need to start giving your body the signals that it's time for your melatonin to rise.
Hmm. And that'll keep you sleeping.
Mhm.
That'll make you fall asleep and keep you asleep.
And keep you asleep. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And it also will so one of the things that I noticed when I first started using so these are my daytime blue blockers. So, for example, like if I go to the grocery store, I'm like this when I'm walking through the parking lot, and as soon as I get in there, I'm like this.
Mm. Yeah, that's a lot of LED in the grocery store.
Yeah. Or or Five Below, oh my gosh, that place is horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but then at night, I have a darker pair to block out even more blue light because this blocks out a lot of it, but I still need some blue light so that my cortisol doesn't completely drop and my melatonin doesn't rise, and then I'm tired.
Right.
So the nighttime ones block out more of that blue light, and one of the things I noticed was if I was putting them on early, my dark ones, I was losing my appetite, and I didn't really wanna eat dinner, and that's because melatonin suppresses your appetite, which makes sense. When we're sleeping, we
Right.
don't wanna be hungry. We're not supposed to wake up in the middle of the night hungry and, climb out of the cave and get eaten by a leopard or something, right?
Mhm.
So our body's smart. Our body knows, okay, well, we're going to get you to sleep so that you can rest and we can repair your brain. And so let's not make you hungry while you're sleeping.
Right. Which makes sense of like, we talk about with kids, like no screen time after a certain time or not right before bed. Or, I mean, even adults, like don't doom scroll before bed.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to make the connection around the hormones and the light.
Yes. So not doom scrolling before bed is really important. And just as important is making sure that you are getting outside in the morning sunrise. And I'm hearing more and more of this. I'm hearing people talk about this more and more, which is amazing. But what I want people to really know is why. Has to do with quantum biology. Okay. So when you wake up in the morning, you are getting all of that energy from the sun. And that starts a whole cascade of different processes that are going to release hormones, release neurotransmitters. You are That's the first input that you should be giving your body for the day. Light is information. And so you need to get outside. If it's cold outside, you can open your window if you don't wanna take your whole body outside. If you're driving to work when the sun is rising, you can just roll down your window a little bit. But this is giving your body the correct signals so that you can start producing the hormones so that your different systems can check in with your hypothalamus in your brain to kind of figure out what's the status. What's the status of how much energy you have stored on your body? Do you need to save energy or do you have energy in the form of fat that you can burn through?
So even if it's not sunny outside, get your ass
Yeah,
outside.
because the frequencies of energy that are available at sunrise are different than the frequencies of sunlight that are available at midday. And it depends on what time of year it is too. So, for example, right now in the spring, we have more time in the day where we have UVA and UVB light available. So we have that time in the morning where it's just that near infrared and red. And then the UVA, UVB kicks in, which is also really important to have on our bodies without sunscreen. And then in the evening, you go back around sunset to just having the UVA and the UVB. And all of those frequencies of light are telling our bodies different information about what our bodies need to be doing in order to function properly, in order to balance all of our hormones and all of our neurotransmitters, balance our sugar, help us create vitamin D, everything, because we're just animals.
So if you could, obviously, if you work from home, if you work in the office, try to get out morning and then the afternoon and then night. Is there an optimal time that you should be
So it
spending?
depends on well, some people say that you would ideally be outside for, like, 2 hours a day.
Like total? Total.
Yeah, so I'll tell clients, in the day, you people used to take smoking breaks. Take a sun break.
Not great for your health, but
Go
yes.
outside, pull up your pant leg, pull up your sleeves,
Mm.
get sun. Never no sunglasses. If you're wearing sunglasses, you're blocking those frequencies of light getting into your eye that are telling your body what needs to be happening.
But a hat is okay
Yeah, because
because it'll
yeah, you can
still
still get to see the frequencies and mhm,
I
yeah.
see. Okay.
So, with making hormones, if we're in constantly in a blue light environment and our cortisol is constantly rising high, then there's a phenomenon called the pregnenolone steal. Pregnenolone is a precursor to all of our sex hormones and cortisol. And so when we get signals to make cortisol because of the blue light, that pregnenolone that could be turned into our sex hormones instead is being turned into cortisol. Our body is always going to make cortisol before it makes our sex hormones because cortisol is what's going to help us stay alive.
I see. Because we're in a survival state at that point.
And so this is part of why women in their 30s, early 40s are having so many perimenopause symptoms because not only are we living in this blue light, toxic blue light environment, but we're also in these really high cortisol states because we're full-time working moms,
Yeah.
right?
The world's a dumpster
Yeah,
fire. Yeah.
because we're watching social media about all of these issues out of our control that fire us up
That put us into that survival state that we don't need to be.
because we're overexercising, we're fasting too much, we're restricting our food too much, or uh, you're eating too much sugar, which is making your blood sugar spike and drop and spike and drop, and with that comes cortisol, cortisol, cortisol. So there are all of these systems in place that make our cortisol rise to protect us, but because of our environment, we're being overprotected by our cortisol and not allowing us to make our sex hormones.
Mhm. This is a very weird analogy, but my son has been really watching Wall-E. I don't know if you've seen that Disney movie. And all of the people are overweight and they don't know how to walk because they grow up in this environment where they're just like on these chairs and electric chairs and have a screen in front of them. And so obviously we're not there, but I think it just goes to show, because that's like such an extreme example, but it goes to show how much our environment impacts us, obviously on an extreme level, but this is like a little bit like frog in the boiling water. Like it's just like slowly all of these things are popping up like, is this normal? Is this normal? But then everybody's starting to have it and it's like, well, then must be normal if everyone's having it. But when you go back to the functionality of our bodies, it isn't
Right.
normal.
Well, and the same thing. I mean, think of all the people who have autoimmune diseases. This is the same function. These are the same principles that are used to help people with autoimmune diseases, with Hashimoto, with metabolic disorders. It's all related because you're looking at the basis of how do we get energy into our bodies. Two-thirds of the energy that our bodies need comes directly from the sun or from grounding to the earth. And the other third only comes from food.
Which is actually an easier switch if you think about it. Like, if you need I'm on my, like, 2nd thing of coffee, and now I'm already like, "This is a bad choice," which I knew it was going to be. But, because diet, I feel, can be very hard and shaming and confusing, and so if you focus on the light first and then focus on your diet or whatever that looks like, that might be I don't know, it feels easier and, like, makes more sense.
Yeah, that's what I had to do. I really focused on my light environment and was really strict about that first. And I saw huge changes in my mood and my energy. I lost weight just from controlling my light environment and putting
Wow.
my ego aside
That's
and
cool.
going out to dinner with my friends wearing my goofy glasses and not caring.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Who cares at this
I
point,
mean,
man?
yeah. But I was so miserable. I was grasping for anything. And when I learned about these principles, it just really made sense. It really made sense.
Can we talk about the water? So in that example,
Yeah.
like
So the water piece. First of all, the water that you're drinking, it needs to be clean, right? So it needs to be filtered. But then it also needs to be mineralized properly. And then if you can, it's important to find a way to structure your water. So, we think of water as just H2O, right? But and when the water in our body, which 99 of every 100 cell, portions of our body is water. Um, there's a fourth kind of water because we know there's water, liquid, and gas. So there's a fourth phase of water that's called fourth phase water or easy water. And this water is what some people call like a crystalline gel water because it's between a solid and a liquid. And this water is negatively charged. It's found inside of our cells. And the water inside of our cell is the fourth phase water. And then the water outside of our cell is just normal water. The fourth phase water is negatively charged, and the other water is positively charged. And so it creates like a battery. So that once the mitochondria release that ATP, they also release fourth phase water. And that makes it so that the energy, that ATP energy, can actually move across that cell and function properly.
I see.
And so you can if you're drinking water that's clean, that's mineralized and structured, then you're more easily able to convert it into that fourth phase water, where it's actually helping your cells function properly.
What does that look like, uh, as a consumer?
So,
How do I mineralize my water?
you can use like Celtic sea salts. I use
Oh, okay.
Maldon. And then I also use this product called Quintons, which are these glass vials of minerals that I add to my water. I also use electrolytes. And then I have a water distiller, and that makes
Baller.
it makes your water very pure and clean because it even takes out radiation from the water. But then you're left with dead water. There's no minerals in it. There's nothing in it. So I have to remineralize it.
Right.
And then I'll go outside to structure my water. I'll put it just simply putting it in the sun will structure it. And then sometimes I'll go outside and I'll sit and with the thing of water and I'll just stir it. Stirring helps structure it. So then it can be better absorbed into your body.
What about putting chia seeds in your water? Is that weird?
Um, if you want chia seeds, I don't think it's weird, but I wouldn't, some of these foods that are super foods and they're not made to be consumed all the time. And then also, I mean, that leads to a whole other conversation about the way I've been taught is none of these exogenous things from the outside, supplements, hormones, creams, are going to work if if the basis of your vessel isn't aligned.
Which is like if your cells aren't working and creating the energy that it needs to and having the charge, then those creams won't work or the hormonal replacement therapy or all of
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's gonna work, but it's not gonna be optimal. And especially for, I think, people that are going through these hormone changes so early and having such severe side effects, you you can take your HRT and it can very well bring you relief, or you can take the HRT and it can make certain things feel worse. So, and you're kind of just putting something on, like a Band-Aid
A
on top
Band-Aid.
of the real issue. The real issue is you shouldn't be having such a hard time to begin with. And so how can you create a stronger vessel and balance your hormones naturally? Some women who do these protocols are able to start menstruating again. Their symptoms completely alleviate because they're balancing the whole, they're giving their body the right inputs from nature so that the body is intelligent and it knows what to do on its own.
I love that. Okay, so we have light. We got to fix that, mineralize our water. And then was it the energy or charge?
Magnetism. So
Magnetism,
magnetism has to do with non-native EMFs,
which are
which are
everywhere, right?
everywhere.
Though the EM.
So some
Mm.
people can get really frustrated and just be like, "Well, what's the point? They're everywhere." And that's true, they are everywhere, but you might as well mitigate where you can. So some of the easiest things are don't wear
Earphones like I
yeah,
am?
oh, no, those are wired. Don't wear,
Oh, yes.
the wireless AirPods.
Yeah.
You can find so much evidence of how bad those are. Um, all of these non-native EMFs, they're dehydrating our mitochondria. So in turn is making it that our mitochondria can't make that good water, and then those cells can't function.
Right.
They're stressing our bodies out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's good for the Gen Zers because they love those big ass headphones
Right.
now. It's the millennials that are
Right.
really got to pay attention to that.
Mhm. Another thing that I find to be easy is just to turn so before I go to bed, I make sure I turn off the Wi-Fi on my phone, I turn off the Bluetooth on my phone, same thing on my computer, and then I, make sure I put my phone far away from me and so that it's not charging next to my bed,
Next to you.
and then I turn the Wi-Fi off in my house. So I just
Wow.
unplug it. You can put some people have timers that they so that every night at whatever 10 it turns off.
Turns off.
Um, and those are just some of the simple things. Some people feel unwell when they're in an electric vehicle. There's a lot of EMFs in electric vehicles.
Whoa.
Um, I unplug my TVs. I unplug anything that I can when I'm not using it. Because they leak that vampire energy kind of thing. And then if you can ground barefoot in the morning when you go outside to get your sun, that is just getting you in line with the energetic pulse of the earth. It's called the Schumann resonance.
Mm, which has been pretty
Yeah.
wacky
Yeah.
in 2025.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. What about those, aren't there like EMF blockers? Do those work, do you know?
There are, called they're like fabrics that are Faraday fabrics that you can buy, or people have, like, boxes where none of the signals can come in and out. Um, I have a little Faraday pouch that I'll put my phone in. I It's not as small as I wanted, so I'm trying to fashion something when I go on my walks in the morning. I have my little fanny pack, and, I have my phone on me because I like to take pictures of things, but I got this little pouch that I was hoping would fit inside of my fanny pack, and I could put my phone in there so I'm not radiating myself while I'm walking.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's very important to make sure that you're not putting your computer on your lap because, if you just think, yeah, I have my computer on my lap. I'm trying to get pregnant. I have my computer on my lap and I'm sending all of these EMFs right to my ovaries. How are they going to function when the mitochondria in my ovaries are directly being dehydrated?
Right. Wow.
Another important thing for the water is that getting sun directly on our skin is what helps our mitochondria create that fourth phase water. So getting naked outside as often as you can during the UVA UVB any time of day is important. If you're out before UVA UVB, then you're actually conditioning your skin and healing your skin, preparing your skin for those UVA UVB rays. And same thing in the evening. That evening
Mhm.
light is gonna help repair any damage that was done by the UVA UVB. And then the UVA UVB is doing things like converting your cholesterol into vitamin D, creating that fourth phase water, from your mitochondria,
Mhm.
helping you make estrogen in your skin. It's so important.
Mm. I'm excited to make these changes because they feel, like, doable.
Yeah, I mean, I think for those of us that are lucky to work at home, it's a lot
Right.
more doable.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Um, and it is doable for everyone, and you just have to realize that it it's cumulative, right? So if you can't lay out naked for 30 minutes, you can go outside for a sun break and lift your pant leg up a little bit. And that you are making progress in doing that.
I mean, does a bathing suit count?
Yeah, wear your wings.
Semi-naked?
You don't have to be all the way naked.
Okay, can we, before we wrap up, quickly, touch on nutrition? I don't know if we can quickly, but maybe either some myths out there or what to maybe focus on?
Yeah, I think a big myth is that if you go on hormone replacement therapy, you're gonna lose weight. And that's not necessarily true. Um, I think the biggest thing I would say for nutrition is that you need to find a way to have the most stable blood sugar throughout the day. That is most important because several reasons. One reason is every time that you spike your blood sugar, you spike your cortisol and your insulin. The more you're spiking your insulin throughout the day, then the closer you're getting to insulin resistance. Because insulin resistance is just your insulin gets tired of spiking to bring your blood sugar down, spiking to bring your blood sugar down over and over and over, and it gets tired. So it stops working. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the easiest place to start. Also, there's a big push for eating protein, which is true. We definitely, if you're gonna eat something, eat protein before you eat carbs. But if you eat too much protein, that protein is gonna just turn to fat too. So you can't just be like, I'm just gonna eat, my body, however many pounds I wanna weigh in protein. If you're not using that and burning that to build muscle, then it's
Muscle.
gonna go somewhere.
Which I think that's really important because it is like a huge push. Like it's a huge push that I've seen for menopause and premenopause is protein and weightlifting.
Which is true. It's very great. You do wanna eat higher protein, low sugar, lower carbohydrate, um, but you need to pay attention to, like, well, how many calories is that actually translating into in my body? And then if you're eating a ton of protein, but you're still eating a ton of sugar and spiking your cortisol all day, that's not a good combination. And then also make sure you're eating enough fat. I think we really forget that the fat that we eat is made to be burned for energy. And so we don't just need carbs for energy. We can use the healthy fats and the oils and the to burn that for energy too. Um, from a quantum biology perspective, diet, food is information. So if you think it's the same, all of the information, all of the energy on this earth comes from the sun. Everything that makes us who we are as human beings and every little cell and protein and amino acid and everything starts with the sun. The sun transfers, what's the saying? Energy can never be destroyed, it's simply transfers. So the energy from the sun gets transferred into the plants. Then those plants either get eaten by us and that energy transfers to us that way, or oh my gosh, what's my sorry. Or the animals eat those plants and then we eat the animals. So it's just that transfer of energy. And the sun and the frequencies of light that the sun is shining onto the earth that make the plants grow are different compared to depending on where you live on the planet Earth. And so energetically, you want to be eating the plants and animals that live where you live because you need to be getting the information about the environment that you're living in. If you're living on the equator, that's a completely different environment than living up in Alaska. And so, like, if you saw an Inuit eating a pineapple, that's, like, weird,
Yeah.
right? And energetically, that would be weird. And that's also a big problem that we're seeing is that people who are eating things that are not local, that are out of season, are having a lot more, inflammatory responses in their body because they're not living in the right light environment to process these foods that are coming from a place where the light is, on the equator where the light shines all day and there's so much UVB light.
Interesting. Yeah. So eat local and in season.
Mhm.
Mm, I love
And if
it.
you're not
Okay.
sure what's local and what's in season, go online, find a local CSA and look at what they're providing in their boxes, those CSA boxes. You don't have to go through the CSA, but you can look at what they have in their box to find out, "Oh, that's what they're growing, that's what I'll go get."
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's just coming back to, like, nature and the natural rhythms of nature, of Mother Earth, right? And again, like, obvious that might sound cheesy, whatever, but there's so much pulling us away from that, and we're seeing that how it's happening within our bodies, and so the more closely we can go back to that, and it's interesting because there's a lot of things around health around that, like the glasses that are being invented. Like, there's so many things that I think our bodies are naturally calling back towards her, that we get to be really creative and come up with this, like, in between space of, like, we live a modern life, and we also have to come back to nature. And so this is such a beautiful reminder of that. So thank you, Joanna. This has been so great.
I feel like we didn't talk. There's so much, like I was saying, there's so much to talk about, and once I go down kind of this sciencey quantum biology.
But I think it's enough, and I think because we can't overwhelm everything, right? And I think those are really important, like, those 3 topics aren't like, I don't hear that a lot. It's more about nutrition and movement, which obviously is important, and so I think it's a very important or unique spin on how we can treat our bodies on that cellular level, and just, like, do it for a week and see what
Yeah,
happens,
and start
you know?
slow, I spent
Mhm.
a whole year just focusing on my light environment before I did anything to my diet. Then I started working on my diet, and now I'm gonna start working more on my exercise.
Mhm. Yeah, I
And
love that.
just to for me, I know I can't if I try and do it all at once, I get overwhelmed, and so it's just starting small.
Mhm. 'Cause it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle, right? So there has to be this kind of, like, easing into anything new. Joanna, tell people how they can work with you and where to find you.
Yeah, so, my Instagram is navigate.menopause, and I do one-on-one coaching where we look at our, lifestyle tools, self-advocacy and education, and then emotional mastery. So, how something we didn't talk about, right, is how our emotions and our experiences play such a big role in um, our hormone health because perceived stress is just as powerful as real stress, and our thoughts can really affect.
And then we become the people we don't wanna become.
Right, right. I also have some workshops that I do at Foreman Spa. I have one coming up on Sunday called The Quantum Shift, where we'll talk more
Ooh.
about these 3 areas and do some emotional mastery tools to process some of these things like grief and helping us envision a different idea of what this shift is really about and empowering you to make it really the best phase of your life because in all actuality if we're in our 40s early 50s we're just really getting started.
Ain't that right? That's for sure.
Yeah.
Where's Four Moon Spa
It's
located?
in Encinitas in Lucadia.
Encinitas.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then but you work with anyone virtually?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Joanna. This was so great.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to our show. If you are loving what you're hearing, give us a review up on Apple Podcasts as that helps our show grow. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.